Thank you, choir, for that wonderful hymn that brought back some Mennonite memories. It was very tight and well done. And thank you, Liz, for directing. For 65 days, the Mayflower blundered her way through autumn storms and headwinds on a voyage intended to be made in the summer. 102 passengers made that trip across the Atlantic, 104 if you count the 2 dogs. Living in a dark, damp space about 5 feet tall, between the hold of the ship and the upper deck, made even more claustrophobic by makeshift privacy walls. They made that trip, and they were tired and cold and sick with scurvy. And worst of all, they were down to their last keg of beer. It was truly the ultimate, are we there yet? Trip. But these brave people persevered through their rough journey, and they rejoiced when they spotted land. And they saw a sign, "Welcome to Massachusetts." And they immediately made wild turkey the state bird. And stepping out upon Pilgrim's Rock, called that because it was a rock and they were pilgrims, which in the tribal Wampanoag language means undocumented immigrant, they began a new America. And Governor William Bradford offered the country's first prayer when he said, "God of abundant harvests, who made the forests to abound with game and the sea with fish, you have granted us freedom to worship according to the dictates of our own conscience. For this we give thanks." The following year, they ate a Thanksgiving dinner, and then they all watched football. All of this came out of the gray of November. My friend Sherman Wilson, he'd say, with 2 L's like hell, lived to be 104 years old. He was born in 1909, and I officiated his funeral in 2013. Sherm lived through the First and Second World Wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the war in Iraq, and countless other conflicts during his 104 years. He was a golf pro, a tennis instructor, a film maker, and a professor at Wayne State University. He experienced the Great Gatsby, the Great Depression, and the Great Recovery. And he experienced the death of every one of his friends, except for Betty, his wife, who was 96 years old. Yes, he married a younger woman. So when this 104-year-old guy said something, you listened. Life is a gift, Sherm would always say, and thank you is my only prayer. Perhaps one question that we can ask ourselves is, what bounty and blessing have I received that I can celebrate? What thank you can I pray? Jesus said, to those who have, more will be given. He wasn't talking about our 401ks. He was talking about gratitude. Rather than waking up feeling you didn't get enough sleep, or going to bed thinking you didn't get enough done, which is bookending your day in scarcity, what if you woke up grateful because each new day is, well, it's new, and it's a blessing? What if at the end of the day, rather than looking at what we didn't get done, which is going to dribble into tomorrow, which is where many of us spend our day, what if we celebrate what we have accomplished that day and celebrate right now, every moment, every breath, every heartbeat, every relationship, and look for and acknowledge the good in our lives? I can be grateful for something so simple as the wind in my face, or the way my little one-eyed dog runs to greet me with his wee little legs. He looks like an Ewok. Or sharing hot cocoa with an 8-year-old, or a glorious red sunrise, or a delicious piece of pumpkin pie, or a freshly fallen silent shroud of snow. Please don't throw anything at me. Maybe we can learn to be grateful if we remember that each of those are gifts that came to us from the hand of God. Okay, maybe not the snow, but all the other ones were gifts. A good reason for gratitude is that the two emotions that mess us up the most are fear and anger. But you can't be grateful and fearful simultaneously. You can't be angry and grateful at the same time. They just don't go together. So, being thankful can really change your life. It can change your reality. It could change the world. Here in this moment, what can you be grateful for in your life? I guess it's about perspective. A friend shared a letter he received from his creative daughter who is a freshman in college, and I know many of you have children in college. Dear Mom and Dad, the letter read, I have so much to tell you. Because of the fire in my dorm set off by the student riots, I experienced temporary lung damage and I had to go to the hospital, where I fell in love with the nurse and we have moved in together. I dropped out of school after I found out I was pregnant, and about the same time he got fired from his job because of his drug problem. So we joined a carnival, and we're working our way toward Mississippi, where we'll join a crew of a shrimping boat to earn enough money to get our faces tattooed. Signed, your loving daughter. P.S. None of that really happened, but I did flunk my chemistry class, and I wanted you to keep it in perspective. Talking to some kids about Thanksgiving Day several years ago, we talked about food and we talked about traditions, kind of like what we did this morning. I asked if they prayed for their meals, and no, one kid answered, we don't pray before we eat. My mom's a good cook, he said. Gratitude is the gift God gives us that enables us to be blessed by all the other gifts that God gives us. Without gratitude, our lives can degenerate into envy and dissatisfaction and complaints. Complaining is the opposite of giving thanks. To complain, to protest, to grumble, to whine, to bleat, to carp, to cavil, to grouse, to fuss. Spending today complaining about yesterday won't make tomorrow any better. Consider these complaints. I can't believe we had to wait over 30 minutes for our food. Today, over 20,000 children will die of malnutrition. Or this complaint, I don't know what I'll do if my parents don't get me an iPhone 10 for Christmas. Half the working people in the world make less than $2 a day. This runny nose was driving me crazy, so I had to go to the doctor, and what a hassle. About 3 million people will die from curable diseases this year. The preaching was too long, and the organ was too loud this morning. About 1 billion people of all faiths on the planet can't attend church without fear of persecution. Do you have a low threshold of gratitude? Just as a whisper has to reach a certain volume before we can hear it, does goodness have to reach a certain level before we can perceive it? And just as some of us are hard of hearing, are some of us hard of thanking? Of course, our sense of thanking can be improved. So let me end with a story. Dale was the kind of man that every kid wanted as an uncle. Dale knew more about cars than anybody in the universe. He was always rebuilding classic and exotic cars in his garage. And once he drove an old Aston Martin around like James Bond. And the neighborhood kids were sure that it had a machine gun in the tailpipe. A few years ago, Dale was on the roof of his garage, and he was trimming branches. His foot slipped, he fell off the roof, and a large tree limb landed on top of him. The paramedics rushed Dale to the hospital. He was in tremendous pain. Both his wrists were broken, his shoulder was broken, his hip, and several ribs. When they got to the hospital, Dale was woozy. A rare occurrence happened. The marrow from his bones was seeping into his bloodstream, causing all kinds of problems, oxygen problems, and surrounding his brain. His son watched his dad's eyes close and fall into a coma. Dale was on a feeding tube and a ventilator for days and days. His family flew in from far distances to say their goodbyes. The medical personnel told Dale's wife, Becky, she would have to make a difficult decision. I don't know what the odds of recovery were, but Becky, his wife, sat day after day, either near or in Dale's hospital bed, singing and praying and talking and crying. And one morning she sat by the side of his bed, and in frustration or great emotion, she said to him, Dale, wake up. I need you to look at me. I need to tell you that I love you. And slowly, Dale's head turned toward the direction of the voice. She thought it might be a coincidence. So Becky went to the other side of the bed, and she said the same thing. Dale, wake up. I need you to look at me. I need to tell you that I love you. Once more his head turned in the direction of the voice. It was an amazing thing. The miracle of life returned to his body. And after 60 years of living, Dale was born again. His eyes opened, he could see, his mouth opened, and he could talk. He went home, but he wasn't his old self again. One thing is much clearer. Life is a gift, he said, and all my prayers are thank you. Now, I don't know why life works the way it does, and I don't know why some people recover and others don't. I don't know why some prayers seem to get answered the way we hope to and other prayers do not. But I know that life is a gift. And it's not something that we can earn or create or even completely control. And I know one truth about us is that we forget we are going to die. And another truth about us is that we forget we are alive. St. Paul wrote in the epistle, "Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. We have much. We are God's own. Be thankful." And God will answer you, as God says to the entire human race, wake up. I need you to turn to me. I need to tell you that I love you.